Hi everyone, my name's Janet Harrison. I'm the Managing Director of Cofilmic. We run a talent network essentially dedicated to comedy, which spans across TV, film and live performance. For those, probably most of you actually, who don't already know, we run an annual comedy short film festival here in Manchester. But throughout the year, we also run courses, mentoring and networking opportunities for those who have an interest in comedy, as I say, across film, TV and live performance. So we're starting to build now. I mean, this year we've just had our festival at the end of October at the Comedy Store, and we're starting to build now a regional sort of network of people with an interest in comedy, which is a great thing. And we've got some exciting projects on the go, both as a result of people or films that have come through the festival, or people that have attended our courses or networking events. So we've got some potential sort of sitcom ideas which we're trying to develop. We've also got some web series pilots on the go, and some short films which we're going to produce from competitions that we've run, from people who've sent in things like sketches, etc. So it's all about comedy, essentially. Two of the people who've been extremely supportive are here with me today. They've kindly agreed to come and talk. The first is Michael Jacob, just immediately sitting to my left. And Michael's had an incredible career in comedy, originally as a development producer at Alamo, latterly working for many years for the BBC on some of sort of Britain's best loved and most famous sitcoms. So anything from sort of Birds of a Feather right through to 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps and lots of others in between. He now, luckily for us, has relocated to Manchester and works as an independent script and production consultant, recently having worked with Lime on a pilot for E4. So Michael sort of justifiably is a comedy legend in my view. Then further on to my left is Jason Wingard. He's an experienced director but originally started as a stand-up comic in Manchester. I think that's right, Jason. Started to make films in around 1996, then went to study film and photography, graduating in 2004. He's had an impressive list of awards, latterly winning, it's not called Audience Vote, with, what is it called?
People's Choice.
People's Choice with Virgin Shorts, and then actually the grand prize from Virgin Shorts, which I think was something like £30,000 to develop
That's right, yeah.
A film script, which is working with the BFI on at the moment. And latterly also working on various projects locally with BBC Comedy. Before we start, because we didn't know whether there would be anybody here at all, two men and a dog or something, it'd be really interesting to know, because obviously this is quite a techie sort of exhibition, and obviously this is something which is a little bit different. I'm just wondering if anybody would be so brave as to tell us who they are, why they're here, what interest they have in this session, because I think that would help these guys shape what they've come to talk to you about today. Does anybody want to stick the hand up? Just go to this lady first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Erica Dodd. I'm a factual TV director, trying to write my first sitcom, and just came across your website. And just read about the courses that you offer, so that's why I'm here.
Okay, great. Anybody else want to?
Hello, my name's Arbind Ray. I'm here on behalf of Cambridgeshire Film and Television Studios, on behalf of Octavia Hill Society. We're setting up a location-based production company in Wisbech. Okay. And there's been quite a few films shot there on location, like Dean Spanley, Macabre, and David Copperfield. I'm here as a writer. I wrote my debut feature, hence my interest in this topic.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Natalie Henry. I teach script writing at Leeds University, and so I have loads of students who hope to become, a new writer. And I work as a script editor for them when they develop their first 10-minute script, or a lot of them want to develop, bigger film feature. And we have studio, and they produce in-house a lot of the work.
Great.
I'm Tom Williams. I'm a student and I run my own production company, looking at getting into producing and writing comedy.
Okay, good.
I'm James Kiesel. I'm also a student and work with him in the production company, and I'm looking to get into directing and scripting.
Okay, brilliant. Just one at the back and then... Sorry.
Hello, I'm Lloyd Peters. I'm a writer and actor who's written comedy, mainly for radio. So I'm very interested in extending that or adapting that for television. Also teach script writing, like the lady in the front, but at Salford University, and a number of students here from Salford University, a big mass of students here interested in writing comedy.
Brilliant. Did you want to... Last one. Thank you.
If we keep this up, it'll be time to finish.
Yay!
Last and most controversial. Michael once rejected one of my comedy scripts. I'm here to find out where I went wrong.
Yay! We like that. No, that's
just
great.
start with that, Michael. Yes. Well, I'm a famous bastard.
We were going to interview each other, I think. Are we ready to go into that, Michael, do you think?
Yeah, I'll just...
Or are you going to go straight ahead?
I'll just go straight into that question.
Yeah, fair enough.
The thing about rejecting scripts isn't necessarily that they're bad scripts. It's because if you're a producer or a development person, you've got to think two things, really.
Your attention, please. Steve Ackerman, the CEO of Something Else, is about to give a session in the Media Innovation Forum.
Please stay.
Everyone run it.
The session is about to start.
Oh, that's
See you
comedy.
later.
That is a comedy moment.
It's been nice knowing you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two things to think, really. One is the script any good? And of course, if it isn't any good, then it gets turned down anyway. But very often you get a script that is good, but you know that either because of the subject matter or because it's similar to something else, that you won't be able to sell it. So, you can either be someone who sort of espouses lost causes, or you just have to turn something down because there's no possibility of it being made. So it's nothing personal.
We were discussing as well before, I write with a writer called David Isaac, and he always calls it a shooting gallery of ducks, that you have lots of different ideas and gradually people shoot away your ideas and you've got more ducks in behind. And if you're lucky, one of the ducks will get through, and that's the one thing that gets made. I think that when you first start out making stuff, you make the mistake of, it's not necessarily a mistake, but you fall in love with the one project. And so you get devastated when that one project gets rejected, and there's any number of reasons why something could get rejected. So have more ideas and lots of them is the key, I think.
Yes, Lawrence Marks, who's the Low of Low and Mo in Alamo RIP. Lawrence always used to say, you need one project out there, one project you're working on, and one project in your drawer, the ideas in your drawer that you're going to work on next. Because decision-making in television takes an extraordinarily and sort of bizarre amount of time. So, of which you've had some experience.
Yes. So, I mean, rejection's a big part of television or film. It's about making the connections, and hopefully one day one of the ideas goes through. We're in totally different positions. I'm just starting out, and Michael's really
just finishing off.
I didn't
This
want
will
to
be
say
the
that,
end of him
Michael.
today.
But no, Michael has had things commissioned and things done. I'm starting from an opposite end of the spectrum where I'm starting out. I'm, probably not much further on than the university students, but starting to make connections within the TV world and film world, which will hopefully be fruitful in the future.
So Janet said you were a stand-up and then you jacked it in to make films, but had you always wanted to make films?
No. I wanted to be a footballer at first. Basically, I don't want a proper job. That's why I've ended up working in comedy. I mean, but what about you? How did you start working in TV?
Well, it was a complete accident, like most things in my life. Because I had a completely different career, and I was working for the BBC in Scotland, and my contract wasn't renewed. So I came back to London to sign on, and fortunately, two former bandmates had set up a rather successful production company called Alamo, and they were looking for somebody as a script reader, which is like, where many people begin. It's the first step in the industry for people who want to work with scripts. And I said, look, I'm 40 years old. I may be completely rubbish at this, but because we're old friends, then if I think I'm good but I'm not, I know you'll tell me and no hard feelings. But I seem to be able to do it because I've done a lot of journalism and editing, and script editing is just another form of editing. And comedy is comedy if it makes you laugh, and it's not comedy if it doesn't. So then they asked me to script edit Birds of a Feather, and then I sort of launched on my sort of second career.
My background was that I was a footballer, and then I was a stand-up comic, and then I went to university and studied film, and then we started making corporate films, set up a small production company. Then there was the recession. That ended that, and I decided that I was going to try and get attention by going into competitions with big prize money. So I went into the Reed Film Competition and Virgin, and that simultaneously helped me make connections within the BBC. So for the past year and a half, I've been doing a series of taster tapes and pilots with BBC Comedy North. So that kind of then goes back to my connection as doing stand-up comedy as well. Because the films that I've been making, although some of them have been comedies, some of them are not. So that's it.
Have you got a sort of strategy in terms of, did you say, I want to make feature films, but the way to get there is to be noticed through making short films?
No, not really. I think that you kind of the idea was to just go and make films and get them seen. And then by being proactive and getting those things seen and getting them out as far and as wide as you possibly can, you meet lots of people who can help you or are doing similar things. And actually, there is a lot of supported people out there who will help you. I think would you agree with that?
Yes, I think people are absolutely crucial. Sort of knowing anybody is like really helpful than not knowing anybody. So even someone with a tangential connection to what you want to do is like a very useful contact. And then, of course, contacts can get you opportunities, but you have to deliver on the opportunity yourself. Just knowing somebody doesn't get you a commission, but it helps towards that.
Well, yeah, I think there's lots of people, isn't there, at any given point in time who are trying to break into comedy, but it helps if you have somebody that within, in there who's doing it. So, I mean, what advice would you have for somebody just starting out, or somebody who's at a different stage, or maybe the lady there was saying that she'd done factual stuff and now is trying to move into comedy? How would give us two examples, Michael?
Well, you're a director, aren't you? So the obvious thing to do is to make a funny short film to show that you actually can do comedy as well as, because you take the directing as read, really, because that's sort of technical. But to demonstrate that particularly you can work with actors and get performances, and then also sort of edit so so it's actually funny, because editing is like massively important in selling jokes. So it's like, if you can prove you've done something, it proves that you're serious. You know, if you're a writer, if you've written a short comedy play and had it staged somewhere, or even a very long comedy play and had it staged somewhere. But if you've done something in the area that you want to work in, then it like puts you a little bit ahead of all those people who say, "Oh, I just love comedy, and I'll do anything. I'll make the coffee." Everybody says that. It's like you have to have. That's why I was asking Jason about his strategy, because you really need to have a career strategy, know where you want to be, and think about the steps that will help you get there.
Yeah, I suppose we've thought about that. I'm getting a strategy now as we're talking, Michael. But yeah, I'm trying to do both things at once, which is try to break into film and television. So I'm building networks within the BFI and Creative England as well as the BBC. I need to get across to some of the other channels, but I'm just starting out. Yourself, Mike, I wanted to ask you, could you give us an example of a show that you'd worked on and where that had cut, like from the seed of the idea right the way through the development process? Is there one of the shows that you've worked on that, you've got?
Yeah, I suppose sort of the classic example is a show called The Smoking Room that I don't know if anybody ever saw. You certainly couldn't do it now. The writer, who was called Brian Dooley, the sort of writer from Liverpool, had developed it on a comedy course as 10-minute episodes, because at the time Marion and Jeff was successful, and everybody thought, 10 minutes is the way to go. And he sent in 3 10-minute scripts that I thought were fantastically funny. So I talked to my then head of comedy about it, and she loved them too. So then I had to persuade Brian to turn them into half hours, because by the time you see something on television, the industry has moved on. So if you see like a 12-minute show, everybody's decided, 12-minute shows, we don't want them, we want 42-minute shows. So anyway, I persuaded Brian to have a go at half hours. We did a read through. The controller of BBC Two came and didn't laugh once. And we were all like absolutely distraught. And 2 weeks later we had a meeting with her, and she said, "This is fantastic, it's just the sort of show I want on my channel." The lesson of that being, if people don't laugh at a read through, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not funny. And equally, if people do laugh immoderately at a read-through, it doesn't necessarily mean it is funny, because traditionally you stack it with your mates and they're going to laugh anyway. I've got a completely distinctive laugh, and so I was in great demand always for like coming in and kicking off the hilarity, which didn't always work. Anyway, I mean, the Smoking Room was like taking an idea, persuading the writer not to change the idea, but to expand the idea. Getting the casting right, overcoming a big wobble by the head of comedy about whether the casting was actually right, seeing lots of people, and then going back to Robert Webb, who we had in the beginning. And then you just sort of move into, I was executive producing it, my friend Pete Thornton was producing it. Then it's just like moving into production, working with that, all the normal things one does. But it was really, really nice that Brian won the New Writing BAFTA for that show, and also that it was presented to him by Alan Plater, who was a great hero of mine, with whom I had the very dispiriting experience of pitching a comedy drama he wrote to Jane Tranter, who was then head of drama at the BBC. Who said, "Alan Plater, he's lost it," which is not a way, I think, to treat a very distinguished writer who certainly hadn't lost it. Sorry, a bit of bitterness there.
Yeah, it's all right. There's plenty of
bitterness.
that kicking around in television, no doubt.
So, in terms of winning the Virgin Shorts thing,
yeah,
that obviously like increased your visibility tremendously, and
Yes.
probably paid for the rather nice hoodie as well, or at least a proportion of it.
I've not spent a penny of that
That's
prize money yet. We've yet to make the film. We're going to make it in January. But yes, it does raise your profile, and I think that helps.
Did it lead to people like approaching you, or
Well, yeah, it did. I mean, it was two things happened at once, actually. One of the things was that we were at Cofilmic with Joe Blake, who's the head of development at the BBC, and Joe had seen some of my short films, and after we'd done a panel, Joe leant over and said, "Oh, I've got some work for you," which is,
Ooh.
you know, if you want to do that today as well, then I don't mind.
yes, or anyone?
Anybody.
Yeah. So that was it, and then I went in and did a short with a comedian called Tom Binns that they were angling for a show for. Then Cheryl, who was the head of comedy at that time, saw it and liked it and gave us some more development money to do two more. Then we did two more, and then we did a kind of a 15-minute taster tape with him doing 6 or 7 different characters, and everyone liked it, but it's still not been taken on as a show. It's not been commissioned. And now I think they've gone full circle and they're going back and targeting a studio-based show, which ironically will mean that whole year of making films means that they'll get a studio director in and I'll be out. But it doesn't really matter because all the while we've been building, I've been building
a relationship.
Relationships, and if the show gets made, it's still going to be, reflect well on me. I
Well,
think.
do you think he could do an audience show?
Oh yeah, you can definitely do an audience show. I mean, originally, what happened was that they were targeting an audience show in the initial instance, but then when we went off and made our own thing, they started to see, that this had potential to be a single camera comedy, basically.
Because if you think about like Graham Linehan, for example,
Yeah.
who was a writer rather than a director, but he started directing single camera stuff, and has now like moved into studio direction. But if it's a studio show, if it's sort of hybrid single camera studio show,
Then maybe
you just need a multi-camera director.
Well, I did a couple of things. I did a couple of studio shows as well. It just felt completely alien, though, to me. It's a totally different world, and I didn't feel like I had the right personality for that particular world. I felt more at ease with outside of the studio. Let's put it that way. But I know what you're saying. I think that they were thinking that too, but I think they soon found out. No, let's get him out of it.
I'm not sure there is a particular personality, really. I've worked with very quiet studio directors, and studio director who got completely pissed before the recording and lay down on the floor and has
I'll do that
passed out and has never worked again. So, anyway, sorry, I'm just trying to create.
Yeah, no, it just didn't feel like it fit. Certain things you go into and you think, oh, that feels right, and then there's other things that you go into and you don't think, no, that doesn't really fit.
And how about the film stuff? What's happened since winning?
The film we've been developing with the BFI, and we're about to shoot. We're going to shoot in January now. It's been put back to January, and that's a comedy, and it's all about set in the future. It's about middle-class riots. So it should be fun. Middle-class people rioting for olives and stuff.
But did you get people approaching you to do film work after the prize?
I don't think there is ever like a moment where somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Oh, would you like to come and do this? Here's £1 million," or
Yes.
I don't think there is a magic one moment for anybody. I think that everybody just keeps working, and they do make their next thing, and it's got to be good, and then that's it. You just keep working, chipping away.
You can actually keep going on development money, really, can't you, in a way?
You can, yeah. I mean, I suppose. I mean, we get lots of different things that people will say will invest. Creative England have said that they'll put some money into a script that we've been working on. A script that we wrote 2 years ago with Avalon has now come back in full circle, and I'm not even sure which independent it's with, but they're giving us some development money to redevelop that script. So it's funny how things work. I think it's this genesis of ideas, though, that is really important for comedy, and constantly making your connections. I think that seems to be the key, and also not getting too disheartened. Because
Have you got an agent, by the way?
No, I've not got one, but
No.
I'm talking to Hannah Begbie. It's at United Artists. Yeah, you know Hannah.
I know Hannah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So how did you hear about Avalon? I mean, it went into like turnaround with Avalon, did it? Or?
Yeah, well, Avalon took it in, and that script actually got rejected. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad idea. And it's weird how you can kind of recycle something 2 years down the line, because the comedy teams change. They may not have seen the idea. All of a sudden, there's a drive for sitcom. Studio-based, audience-based, studio-based sitcoms, and so if you can repackage your ideas, then all of a sudden they'll get looked at again as if they're completely new, which is quite funny.
Yes. Well, also because people move around so much, so it's probably like different people reading the script than read it in the first place. Though.
But also, I think that kind of lots of things get rejected, don't they? And then I think that people think, oh, that's it. But you can take it elsewhere, can't you? I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have examples of something like that, Michael?
I've only ever turned down one script that got made elsewhere.
Right, okay. So you've got a good track record.
If you're kind of in development or like commissioning work and trying to get it made, you never want to be the guy that turned down the Beatles, which is like going back a bit, but historic. Or the guy that turned down Radiohead, or the guy that turned down Jay-Z, or whatever. So, no, there aren't any examples really, and it failed anyway. So I felt like entirely vindicated. But
I had a rejection letter of Faulty Towers on my Facebook page, which kind of like I can't remember what it said, but somebody had rejected Faulty Towers. So often it's just one person's opinion, and it's worth persevering if you believe in that idea.
And also people's opinions. I was reading a film script yesterday by a writer I know, and we developed a show together that the guy in charge of comedy said, this is really good, but the first 10 pages just need to... the first 10 pages are really good, but the rest of it really needs a rewrite. So we left the first 10 pages as they were and rewrote the rest of it. And then I gave it back to him and he said, well, this works really well, but I don't think the first 10 pages are very good. So you can never rely on people like remembering what they've read or like thinking the same thing about what they've read. So it is like extremely whimsical, and as Jay said, don't get downhearted and try and pitch it elsewhere.
Should we take some questions from?
Yeah. Has anybody got any questions? Just want to raise your hand if you have.
Student at the front.
It's just a quick one really for Jason. I have written a sort of a darkish sort of comedy short, and the thing that I'm struggling with it is mainly because it's sort of based around physical and shots as opposed to dialogue. Getting actors that are good at comedy physically is more difficult than getting actors in general. How did you get around that when you were making your first few?
Well, a lot of the people that I worked with were comedians anyway, so they were making the transition into acting rather than the other way around. But I think you never really struggle to get people who want to act. You never struggle to get actors. I know that you kind of you took in quality control here as well. But perhaps go and target some stand-up comics that you like. Tell them that you like them. They love that. And get them in your film. And also kind of see who are the people that are doing character acting or character comedy on stage, because they'll be good people to tap into. And of course, if you start making stuff with them and it's good, then that gets seen by the BBC or whoever else, then you're connected with that person, you've got a relationship with them. So it's a good way, good route in.
Anybody else?
I'm a new comedy writer, and I'm trying, excuse me, I'm trying to get into the industry. But as a beginner, it's very, very difficult. So, can you give any tips, please, Michael? Really, that's.
Well, just write a lot. You know, just keep having as many ideas as you can and write them and get them out there. Be prepared for scripts just come back without any comment. If somebody actually writes back to you and gives you some notes, then that means they kind of believe in you, even though that particular script might not be ready. So that's your first contact, whoever that person is. So, like, stay in touch with them without bombarding them. And just keep firing stuff out. It's like really, really difficult, I know, because a lot of indies won't read scripts that don't come via an agent. The BBC Writers' Room has changed its policy over the past couple of years, so it has like windows where people can send things in rather than being able to send things in all the time. If you like a particular comedy show and you feel your style is spiritually similar, then I should send a script to the producer of that show. Because nobody produces a show that they're not in sympathy with, or very rarely anyway. So they might like your work and be encouraging or even take it further. And also, never overlook radio, because radio's got so many more hours of comedy than television has. And although it pays very badly, it's a recognised way in, and it's a really good way of getting your work exposed. And because the only way you learn how to be a better writer is to have your work performed and get that awful sense of embarrassment and shame that makes you want to do better the next time.
Because obviously we've been running some writing and selling TV comedy courses, and at the end of that we have a showcase event. So we have sort of the best 10 minutes of each new writer's work, which we perform, and we invite industry people there. But it is true. I mean, that is the acid test. You know, when you actually perform or get people to perform your work, because you know very quickly, don't you, whether it's funny or not, because you've got an audience there. But I know it's easy for me to say, but if there's any chance you can get together with anybody else who've either got filmmaking skills or even, you know, to have it performed as a theatre piece or whatever, it's always, I think, shows a bit of gumption, doesn't it? You know, that you've actually thought about it and wanted to get it produced. And I know it's a bit, you know, it's a bit cringy, isn't it, watching your own work? But that's the only way, really, that, like Michael says, you're probably going to improve as a writer, or find out whether your comedy writing is actually funny. And just keep doing new stuff. You know, like Jason was saying with the lining the ducks up, you know, you get so attached to one script sometimes, and you just think, I want to be pushing this because I've spent so much of my time on it. But just continually, you know, be having new ideas and things in the pipeline, really.
It's also worth saying that some people want to be comedy writers and they're like really good on structure and character and story, but they're not actually very funny. But it means they're potentially good drama writers. So it's worth thinking about writing as the whole field of writing.
Collaboration is key as well. I mean, well, you just made me start thinking then about Edgar Wright and, you know, and Simon Pegg and Shane Meadows and Paddy Constantine, and how all these people have collaborated together and have been drawn together and have grown together through the industry as well. So, you know, I think it's a good way of doing things. I'm going to go and start looking for somebody to collaborate with after this. Someone good.
Anybody else? Oh, it's this lady here.
Hiya. Janet, could you tell us a bit more about what Cofilmic do?
Yeah, well, I'd made a short film comedy, obviously, a short film myself, having done a script writing course a few years ago, and I was a bit annoyed, I suppose, by the lack of some outlets for it. There didn't seem to be a comedy dedicated film festival in the UK. And also, I think even the really big film festivals don't, if you excuse the pun, don't take comedy very seriously. So somebody said, well, why don't you start up your own? And I didn't really want to, I know this sounds awful, but I didn't really want to start just yet another sort of small film festival, because anybody who runs film festivals will tell you it's a quick way to lose money. But so what I thought was, if I tie it into a sort of a much bigger vision of something that it could be, which is about inspiring a new sort of generation, if you like, of comedy filmmakers, and how we might gather together all this sort of talent network, so that, we're talking about collaboration here and getting together with guys like this who know what they're doing and they've been in the industry. It's about forming that centre of excellence, really, for comedy production. And I just thought, well, Manchester or the Northwest generally has got such a rich heritage of comedy. And obviously with what's happening now over at Media City and Sharp and places like that, it seemed like, now's a good time, and certainly here's a good place because of that heritage. So the film festival really is only part of what we do, but it's very much at the heart of what we do. And it's about getting either talented people or talented projects attached to some industry expertise to see if we can take that forward to the next level. So it's not just about showcasing, although that's really valuable. And like Jason said, just turning up at the festival and chatting to those people that are there, you'll get those connections anyway. It's about how, what next. So like the courses, it's great to know how to structure and how to write a sitcom, but what next, So it's about getting it showcased, it's about pitching to industry, and it's about continuing with those writers groups to make sure that we motivate them to write more. And I think the comedy, we were talking about this earlier, I think it's quite a small pool of people, really, which is quite nice. If you've got an interest in comedy, writing comedy for TV or whatever, it is actually quite a small pool, it's quite niche. So, once you've started to make inroads into getting connections with people in the industry, you're a good way there to knowing pretty much everybody. And again, like Michael was saying, people do move around a lot. John Montague, who was here at BBC Comedy, is now commissioning comedy over at Sky, and those sorts of things happen. And so Cofilmic is really about keeping tabs on all that, and making sure that we put the right people in touch with each other to actually get stuff made. Sorry, this.
Hi. Most of these scripts that I write are drama, but I have had ideas for sitcoms and comedy shows. What's the best way to sort of write for comedy, because I've not really had any experience in writing for comedy?
Well, I would say come on one of our courses, but that sounds dreadful, doesn't it?
We Michael had said, people were submitting 10 pages rather than full script. Does that happen a lot, or?
It's in the structure, isn't it, of how to write sitcom. I think that's
Yeah, well, sort of sitcom's a dramatic form that should also be funny. I can't say how to write comedy, because you either do it or you don't. And if the dramas you've been writing have got comic elements, then you should have a go at a comedy. If they don't, then you're probably not a comedy writer. Sorry to be blunt, but either you do it or you don't. And if you're not doing it, there's no magic way of suddenly starting to do it.
It's kind of it's weird, because there's comedy. It's a small circle of people, and everyone's really nice. But also, it's a business, isn't it? And you're valuable to somebody else if you can make them some money. And that's the way that everything seems to work, doesn't it? You know.
Yes,
So
if you can make someone some money, or if you can advance somebody's career
yeah.
on the back of your talent.
um,
So you're like a commodity, really.
yeah. So if what you write is good, they'll be all over it. It won't be missed.
It's a very quiet Salford contingent. Not known for being shy.
Any more questions?
Janet, I think that you should mention as well the linking you've got with Creative England.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jason. Forgot about that. Yeah, well, at the festival, Creative England announced we are actually launching something called a comedy lab. The exact details have yet to be ironed out, but it's going to start probably in the new year, February, March time. But it's for people who are interested in writing comedy features. You don't have to have already written one. But it's going to be a sort of a two-tier range of masterclasses over maybe 6 weeks, where people who are really just completely starting out can come to some great industry sessions and meet some really good mentors and learn about the basics of how to write comedy features, and other people who will pay a little bit more. You do have to pay for it, but it is heavily subsidised by Creative England, so it's a very competitive rate. But they will get a more in-depth sort of mentoring and support, and also have an industry pitching session at the end. And Creative England have said that they would be happy if the ideas are good to fund at least one. So to give that person £5,000 to develop their idea into a film script, so you don't have to have already written the film script by the end of the week 6. And this, I'm hoping, will be very much the start of us doing this sort of what next, really, so that we don't just give that person that money and that's it, that we do actively help them and connect them with the right people and start this sort of pipeline, really, of comedy film production through writing. So that's very exciting. I'm really pleased that obviously that Creative England have chosen to support us. So obviously if anybody wants any details from me, I'm around for a short while after this, or obviously you can just keep your eyes peeled on our website for that. Is that it? Well, I hope you found that interesting. I don't know whether you thought it was going to be like that or not, but thank you very much. Have we got another question? Sorry.
Sorry. You were talking about development money, and obviously Creative England's one way. Are there other outlets as well, other areas, other people to approach or to pitch at?
Of funding?
Yeah.
Yeah. For TV or film? Both. TV stuff tends to come from internally or from the production companies themselves. I know that Lime have got money. Go to see them. They've got money for comedy development. Film, you're probably looking at building a relationship with Creative England, Screen Yorkshire, the BFI, and there's some other places as well that you can that you'll manage to find online. There's something called Collaborate, which is a script writing thing where there's funding short films at the moment. But you have to move quick. The end of the month, I think, is the deadline for that. And their film's up to 10 minutes long or 15 pages long, and you get £10,000. But these things tend to be run by much the same groups, so it's infiltrating those groups and getting those people to know you, which seems to be the key. And I think it's the same in TV as well.
Well, in TV, certainly over the past 5 years, people have stopped paying for scripts, using the slightly like Weasley argument that you write for nothing, but I give you my time. I think this is entirely wrong, and it's exploitative of writers. And if you're asking somebody to do work, then you should pay for that work. But unfortunately, that's the way the industry's gone now. I was talking to like a sort of big wheel in the comedy internet world, and he was saying that there people used to do things for nothing just to get the exposure, but now good people are such in demand that they're being paid. So the money's like moved away from television and scripted comedy into the internet. But you will be trying to break into TV. You will be asked to work for nothing.
If that's all the questions, I want to thank Michael and Jason, and if you could give them a round of applause, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Janet, of course, as well.
Janet?
Thank you. And yeah, we'll be around for a very short while if anybody wants to ask us anything else. So thank you very much for your time.